welcome to I Caught It on Audio. This is Water Cooler Chat episode 15, The Rings of Power, season 1, episode 4.
Hello and welcome to another episode of I Got It on Audio, a 64 Tacos podcast. Today we're going to be continuing our water cooler chat about the show Rings of Power. And we'll be talking about the fourth episode in season 1 today. The synopsis is gazing into a
Palantir.
Muriel, probably said that wrong, has a vision of the tidal wave destruction of Numenor. Chancellor Pharazôn encourages discord between the Numenorians and elves. Hildbrand manipulatively oh my gosh, reading is hard.
Manipulatively.
Well advises Galadriel. Good thing I can edit this. Then Pharazôn Galadriel convinces Muriel to wage war against the orcs in the Southland, and war preparation begins. Isildur and friends are kicked from the Naval Academy, but then join the war effort. Man, they put a lot of spoilers in this. Adar appears to be a scarred elf from the Elden days. Adar releases Alandir to give a surrender offer to the humans, taking refuge in the Orc Tower. The orcs find out the ancient artifact Evil Sword Hilt they seek is in the tower. The dwarves found Mithril and keep it secret, but Elrond discovers the mine. King Durin sends Prince Durin to discover what the elves of Lindon are up to. Okay. Well, that was a very thorough synopsis, actually.
Yes.
So, what do you guys think of this episode?
Matt, let's hear from you since you haven't been on board and you watched all 4 episodes before getting to talk about it.
Yeah, I really liked this episode. This was probably the first episode where I didn't absolutely hate what Galadriel was doing. And
that's fair. I mean, that's something Dan and I had been talking about. He had trouble with Galadriel since the beginning, but I got on board after episode 3. So yeah, it was nice to see her actually being elven in this episode. What else did you think?
I'm loving absolutely everything to do with Elrond and the dwarves. That's probably my favorite part and story arc going on is Elrond and the dwarves. I love Prince Durin's wife. She's awesome.
She is amazing. Yeah, she's just the perfect dwarven woman, especially with royalty and all that. She just nails how I would foresee that character playing out.
Yeah, her name's Disa in the show, but yeah, the person playing her is doing a great job. Yeah, for sure.
Like sweet and cheerful, but yet still has authority behind her, and it's very well done.
Oh yeah.
I really liked that reveal with the scarred elf. I thought that was awesome. I really, really liked that he's leading this orc band.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where they take this. The orcs, if I'm not mistaken, were created as kind of like a bastardized version of the elves. Like the Maiar who created them wasn't able to create life, so they took the elves and warped them basically to make the orcs. Is that right?
I believe that's correct. They're elves that were turned into orcs, and now they procreate. I think, but originally they were elves that were turned into dwarves by Melkor, the original devil, big bad guy. The person that Sauron serves.
So it's interesting that the orcs call this Adar character father, because I feel like it has something to do with that. And I hope they elaborate on that.
Or not Saruman. Didn't Saruman grow orcs?
Okay, so the way that worked, I was reading a little bit about this recently. The Uruk-hai, the ones that he was in the movies you're talking about when he was growing them in the weird birthing pit thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a movie thing that they were sort of created in these little pits. They actually are the normal elven based orcs crossbred with humans. So
Okay.
they're that's why they're maybe a little bit bigger and thicker. The Uruk-hai are part human orcs, but they don't really go into that in the movies at all. They just sort of say, "Oh, here's some big bad Saruman related Uruk-hai," you know.
Right.
But yeah, that's what's going on with that.
So you're saying that Peter Jackson's interpretation of the Lord of the Rings was not letter for letter from the book?
Yeah, that's just
blasphemy.
What's just so funny about people freaking out? Like I have a vague memory of people being a little upset about some stuff when those movies came out. And I hadn't, I had read the books and there were definite differences, but they were so enjoyable. Yeah. And you could understand why they made. There's some changes where I'm like, you didn't have to do that. But most of them, you're like, oh, I get it. It's a movie. Okay, right. let's just go with it, And the outcry of like trolls getting really mad about every little thing that they've changed.
Internet trolls.
I assume they're not actual trolls on the internet. That they're
not
trolls.
They're not frost trolls or trolls. Hell trolls.
Oh yeah. They aren't the three trolls in the Hobbit sitting around the fire deciding how to cook dwarves and hobbits. Yeah. But the response has been stupid. Like, yes, they're definitely timeline smushing stuff that happened over the course of thousands of years. Mm-hmm. Do you want to recast and jump forward, hundreds and thousands of years every 4 or 5 episodes? You could, but I understand why they decided these are all the events that happen that lead up to the Lord of the Rings. Let's just, we're going to combine some characters or make characters that were live at the same time but didn't do these things at the same time, or we'll just say that this is the stage of Numenor. It lines up with okay. Well, it makes it easier for people watching to follow what's going on rather than, there's a reason people don't read the Silmarillion or the appendices to Lord of the Rings nearly as much as the Hobbit or the Lord of the Rings. It's a mess of history in words. There's so many characters and listen, it's beautiful writing, but it's not user friendly. Right. And you kind of need a TV show. It's already not user friendly. Dave, you haven't read the appendices or Silmarillion.
No, and definitely not.
I feel like, and neither of you, right, Matt? So would you guys think that what we need is more characters and multiple characters and big time jumps? Would that be helpful for your enjoyment of the series?
No, I'm enjoying it just fine as it is right now.
Yeah,
it's definitely flawed, but I don't have any of the gripes that seem to be flooding the internet about continuity and racism.
Whatever. We talked about that a bit in the first episode or two. But that's dumb too. But okay.
Anyway, that's enough griping about griping. Yeah. So my takeaway from this episode was that they wanted to do as many father-son dynamics as they possibly could. You had the orcs and Adar. You had Elrond revealed that his father was one of the stars. You had the dwarves, the prince and the king, that dynamic. You had the queen and her father, and then you had the boy and Alandir, where he rescues Arondir.
Yep. The son of the healing lady of the the only person that knows how to clean themselves in the entire cast of men.
Right. So they just seem to be flooded with that in this episode.
Yeah, you're right.
And Isildur. Isildur, and his father, right?
Elendil is his father, there's, although they didn't actually interact in this episode, I don't think, right? I think he just told his sister, but obviously his dad's gonna have a feeling about him getting kicked out of the the Navy or whatever it was that he was the boat's career arc that he was on.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really think about that, but you're right. Lots of sort of parent-child relationship type stuff.
Yeah, it was definitely that. What did you think of this episode, Dan?
I thought it was pretty good. We didn't get any Harfoot stuff, which it's a little disappointing. I kind of enjoy that. I want to know more about the stranger.
But they did allude to the stranger when Adar was telling the elf about it. He said, or I don't remember what the conversation was, but they said that they kind of alluded to him being Sauron.
And also, I don't know how specific it was, but that's certainly a conclusion you could draw. And also, it was mentioned, I think, in the vision of the Numenorians, that I think among other things, they kind of alluded to that and maybe mentioned that. I don't know, maybe I have that wrong, but yeah. So, do you think that who do you think Adar is, and who do you think the stranger is? Then,
I think the stranger is Sauron.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
I'm with you on that one. I think they hinted directly enough about that at this point. It's certainly who they want us to believe it is, and I have no reason to believe otherwise. I mean, originally I kind of thought it was Gandalf because it was a wizard-like creature or a being, but that was just a shot in the dark after episode 1.
Yeah, I kind of thought that at first until he killed the fireflies, and then I thought, he's probably Sauron.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't make a ton of sense for it to be Gandalf, but that's something they can make changes, and they may have made that change because he was floating around at this time. He was alive and functional. But again, they're messing around with the timeline a bit, so it's not impossible, I don't think.
As far as Adar is concerned, I think that it may be the original elf that was corrupted.
Okay, that's an interesting.
That's just kind of an idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's so your argument would be he is essentially a made up character. Sort of the reason they call him Father,
right?
Is because he's the oldest of them. He's sort of the leader.
Yeah,
I think there's a pretty good case to be made for the stranger being Sauron, but I think there's a pretty good case for Adar being Sauron as well.
Okay.
I'm not sure that either make a ton of sense at this point, but I feel like that's on the table too. Sauron was never an elf, but no, he was an elf, wasn't he? Or was he one of the Maiar? I can't remember if he was one of the Maiar.
He was the same level as Gandalf.
Okay, yeah. So he was second tier god, basically.
Yeah.
Rather than an elf. So he could have, but again, he can take his form as all the Maiar appear as whatever they want to appear as. So the argument for Sauron could be for the stranger for being a wizard shaped guy who doesn't know what's going on. But I think my argument against that is I don't know why he doesn't know what's going on, or he's really running a really elaborate scheme to try to trick a few Harfoots into thinking he doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
That's why I don't know that the stranger would make sense as Sauron, because Sauron, broadly speaking, like during this period, is known as sort of Sauron the Fair, and he like basically uses we know the result is he's going to make the one ring that controls all the other rings, and he does that through trickery by encouraging them to do things. And
that's true. And Celebrimbor already has the idea of making the rings, which I believe he gets from Sauron, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. Well, I think what we know so far is that he wants to make something greater, something more amazing than the cities and the other things that he's built, something to rival, Feanor, who made the Silmarils. But I don't know if has he mentioned that rings is what he has in mind, or
no? I don't believe he specifically called it out so much as the show's just alluded to it.
And they're of course they're building the giant forge with the dwarves in order to create temperature high enough. But I don't remember. I'm sure we know in the lore somewhere where these rings were made. But I think Celebrimbor makes all the rings, and so he probably doesn't do that at Mount Doom, which is where Sauron makes the one ring.
Right.
So it makes the most sense for him to be building that forge, but maybe he doesn't know what he's going to make yet. He just wants to make something magical and amazing, and maybe we are yet to hear from Sauron. Maybe we'll see Sauron get in his ear and sort of turn him and point him towards something. So really, I guess what I would say is neither Adar or the stranger make sense yet as possible Saurons, but there's more to come. So
yeah,
maybe we haven't met Sauron yet, which is entirely possible, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I like the Harfoot plot line, so I wanted to learn more about the Stranger. So I was a little disappointed that we didn't get that, but they've been started leaving some plot lines out, and that's okay. I mean,
yeah,
if they're planning on doing like 5 seasons and the better part of 50 episodes, then I don't need to have everything in every single episode.
Right.
Hopefully I hope they keep going personally, and I think the ratings are pretty good, so it seems like they're doing okay. The Arondir plot line has been pretty good, I think. He got to do some more cool elf stuff, which
Yeah.
That's a great way to show that the elves are amazing.
Yeah.
And that's certainly consistent with the movies, and it's consistent with the lore.
The elves are playing with loaded dice. They roll 20s far more often than any character should be able to. But that's fine because that's part of their lore. The elves don't have to shovel their front steps. They can just walk on them. Right.
They can walk on snow. But so that was cool. I'm interested to see what that weapon, that broken off sword hilt thing.
Yes. That was one thing I was going to ask is what are your thoughts on that, Matt? What do you think? What do you think about the evil sword?
Well, that seems like it's the Sauron sword or something.
Or Morgoth
gifted.
Even is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Because the old man talks about, he implies that he's like still loyal to Morgoth from the previous age.
Right.
Who was defeated. But so would this be maybe his sword? Maybe Sauron's, maybe his sword? I'm kind of thinking Morgoth at this point.
Didn't he say something about it was gifted as a sign of the pact between?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but I think you're right. I think there was an implication of, I still have that because of the agreement that we made. And he seemed unrepentant, the old man, whose barn he found it in the first episode. But yeah, what I thought was kind of crazy was he knew they set it up, right? So he finds the sword. He's like, whoa, this is cool. He had found it before. He took it. He's playing with it. He accidentally got some blood on it. And it was like, ooh, it likes the blood. But the weird thing is, like, the kid, was it Theo or something?
Something like that.
Yeah, the kid,
the half-elf.
Yeah, when he's... well, maybe we haven't seen his ears, have we?
Nope.
So that's one possibility. So you think, Dave, that maybe she hooked up? Who do you think his father is? I guess is a better question.
Arondir.
You think so? I feel like they haven't consummated yet. That's my thought.
I think they have.
You think?
I think they have too.
All right. Guess I'm just a freaking innocent child over here.
I guess so.
Or you could be right. I mean, we don't know yet.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out. I feel like it's more like a longing, and they want to be together, but they haven't done it yet because he doesn't want to, like, whatever, forbidden love and all that. But I am curious to see who the father is. I just didn't get the impression that it was him. But that's entirely possible. I don't know. That's just what I saw.
That's interesting because that was the first thing I thought of when the two adults were in the same scene together, and then they show the kid, in the first episode or whatever. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's how that happened.
Well, we know that he's gone. I think it's been stated that his father is gone, is what Theo says, or maybe his friend says, his like asshole friend says something about his dad leaving. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'd be curious. I kind of think not, but maybe
she doesn't tell anyone who the dad is because she doesn't want retribution.
That's possible. Yeah. So anyway, we'll see what happens. I guess we'll find out. But yeah. So the kid, like, when he's in trouble, he just stabs it into his arm right away. Like, he knows how it works. I was like, oh,
right,
going for it, huh? Which, fine. They set it up enough where I'm fine with it, I guess. And maybe if he is a half elf, he has some sort of intuition. I don't know. But yeah, I thought that was interesting just to see where that's going. And it's interesting to see that the humans are still, at least some of the humans are still maybe loyal to Morgoth, which means that they will probably be open to Sauron and stuff like that, which, that makes sense. I thought that was pretty cool. The Galadriel scene I felt like she was being a little more like, she felt a little more elven, for lack of a better term. A little less petulant, a little more like she was being firm and trying to convince, but still passionate, which I think is a great sort of line to walk.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's frustrating that it took Halbrand telling her, hey, you're not being the way you're supposed to be, for her to realize that was the case. It's like none of her stuff from the third episode, especially, none of that stuff made any sense, and we hashed that out for quite a while.
It didn't. So, it just doesn't feel. I don't know. It's hard to know because the elves are in their later stages in the Lord of the Rings, so they're much more wise and regal. So okay, I don't know. Maybe it is fine, but I agree. I feel like it's a little too rash and a little unwise. And she's already thousands of years old. It's not like she's just some kid. But anyhow, and that brings up another question. Matt, what do you think? What do you think's up with Halbrand?
Which one's Halbrand?
He's the human who who is with Galadriel.
Well, I think she's probably right. He's probably some kind of heir to the Southlands or whatever, but he's clearly got a berserker's rage in him, which is fun to watch.
Here's my theory. My theory is that he is a good candidate for being Sauron because he doesn't have to look like an elf, because he can appear as whatever he wants. I wonder, first of all, how interesting was it that he was desperate to work at a smithy?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So we know he's going to make the One Ring at some point. And then he's not saying no to anything or yes to anything. He sort of implies that, I got this sign, the sign of the people of the Southlands or whatever it was from a dead man, which could entirely be true. And still, he could still be a bad guy, or he could just been some guy that found something. He definitely isn't automatically on Galadriel's side. He gives what's his name as what's the guy's name?
I'll just edit it in later.
Pharazôn. He gives the stripy beard guy.
Yes, Chancellor Pharazôn.
Yeah, he gives him some advice, which is at least, who knows what the point of that was. Was this so she could get away? I don't know. His advice seems to be open-ended enough where I can't pin him down, say he's definitely one thing or the other. But I got a working theory that maybe he is. It's the blacksmithing thing. It makes me think that he might be Sauron, and he deliberately appeared around her, and that's why he was so happy to sacrifice the other castaways. The morally gray thing that he does makes sense. While he's still a pretty convincing. He has Galadriel thinking he's something, which he may or may not be. So I don't know. That's what I was thinking a little bit. But
so Dan, your current vote for Sauron is Halbrand, right?
Halbrand is probably my number one, then Adar, and then the Stranger's my least likely of the three.
Okay, and then Matt, it's almost certainly one of those three characters. So between those three, Matt, how would you rank them?
I would put the Stranger at the top, and then Halberd, and then Adar at the bottom.
Yeah, I think I'd go with the same as you, Matt. Though Dan, you do make a compelling argument for Halbrand.
You almost convinced me. I was flipping them back and forth in my mind.
There's a little evidence for all of them. Like you can nothing is definitive for sure, and that's actually kind of cool that they're doing that. I think I don't have a problem with it. And you know what? There's option 4 too, which is. We haven't met him yet.
Well, yes, of course. Yeah.
But of the characters we've met. Yes. Yeah.
Did you guys think that he caused what's her name's dad's ankle? The Stranger caused the dad's ankle to break?
There was definitely an implication. He can't control his magic, and him breaking that stick is what broke his ankle, which could have been an accident because he can't control his power. Right. Or it could have been a part of his act, I don't know.
What is everyone's favorite character so far?
Ooh, do you have
I think Matt? Mine is Elrond.
Elrond's good.
Elrond, okay.
Elrond.
I quite like Arondir too. I like his sort of stoic elf thing.
Yeah.
While still, feeling the draw of humans, which I think is a good way to think about elves. A lot of the elves that are in the story.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. He kind of epitomizes how I envision an elf in Tolkien's world, and by extension in D&D, because D&D is basically just Tolkien with a little bit of Greek mythology in it.
The only other character I might mention is who I found interesting, although there was a bunch of them, but that pops into mind who's a little bit smaller is Elendil, Isildur's father. I kind of like his sort of like, he's kind of he's pro elf, but he's also, he's smart enough not to be too over the top with it. And we know, of course, that later on he is going to, lead a fight against Sauron. It'll be interesting to see him. So I've been keeping an eye on him because it'll be interesting.
Spoiler alert.
To see how he gets there. Oh yeah, spoiler alert.
Yeah, my other favorite would probably be Nori, which we didn't get to see in this past episode, but I think she is just a lot of fun to watch, and I love the Harfoots. I love what they're doing with them.
And the Harfoot Elder, the guy played by Lenny Henry, he's awesome too.
What is?
Yeah, I love the Elder.
Yeah,
there's a lot of good characters. I mean, what do I think of this show overall so far? I would say pretty good, and I want to watch more. Mm-hmm. It hasn't had quite the magical moments. The visuals and music are stunning. Like that's true. It hasn't had these really like amazing emotional moments and of characters I really connect to completely yet. But I feel like it could. I feel like it's more of a slow build, and I like that. I'd rather they built it slowly and took their time than tried to rush through too much stuff. So I'm cautiously optimistic about the way we're headed so far.
Yep, me too.
Matt, what are your thoughts of the overall show so far? Having watched all four and first now getting to talk about it.
I absolutely love the costume design and the set design. It's really beautiful to watch. I love the way the orcs look. They look like really gruesome, and their outfits are really cool. And exactly as you would think a scavenging force such as the orcs would dress. And
and a cool detail they added is they wear these skulls, which look badass, of course, but also it makes sense because they're trying to shade themselves from the sun because they're an earlier age of orc that has not acclimated to the sunlight yet.
I like the way they've made them, like you said, Matt, more like scavengers as opposed to the more militarized ones we see in Lord of the Rings, which were bred specifically to be a military. But it's a nice contrast to show the different era. That's really neat what they've done with that.
And I love that all the storylines have a very different feel. Like the Harfoot storyline doesn't feel anything like Elrond's storyline or the I can't ever remember his name. The other elf, the one that was captured.
Arondir.
Arondir. They all have like these very different feeling storylines. So it's like you're kind of popping through. It's almost like you're changing a channel, but they're all linked together.
Yeah, I agree. They have different tones, and we talked about how the accents are different for different groups of people, which is cool. It helps you keep
it's a really
them separate.
Good way to do it.
And there's plenty of accents in the British Isles, which is where they're pretty much all drawn from, so that works well. I did think one thing that I thought was a little weird was I wish we would have heard from the king who's ill. I wanted him to say some stuff. I mean, I have no problem with the Queen Regent, running the show and everything. I just wanted to hear, because he's like the staunchly pro elf king in Numenor, who sort of really pushes that, and she's clearly being political by sort of being a little anti-elf while still kind of believing her dad but still also believing the prophecy of the Palantir. So she's a really interesting character, but we didn't hear anything from him specifically other than he's old and infirm, which, okay, I just thought we were going to get something from him.
But we still
could.
Yeah.
Although...
And they could do the thing where they show it in flashback once they're doing something. So it's not ruled out that we'll hear something from him, but he may be gone to the point where he can't really talk much. We heard him say her name, Muriel or whatever, a couple of times while he was coughing. He may not be able to do much more.
This is true. I did think it was a bit strange how quickly she changed from I won't help you to all right, we're gonna go. Although they did temper it with she asked for volunteers, so it wasn't like I'm going to command our Numenorian army or navy or whatever to go. So it's kind of a compromise, I guess. But I did not expect her to be like, all right, I'm going too. Who wants to come with me? I was like, oh, all right. I knew we were going to go back to Middle Earth from Numenor, but it just kind of felt like it wasn't really set up super well. Like she spent a lot of time saying, listen, the prophecy says you're the beginning of the end. And then Galadriel's like, oh, well, we should renew the old alliance. And she's like, all right, we'll renew the old alliance. You're like, oh, okay, great. I mean, that's what you want, but like, it just felt a little bit out of nowhere. But whatever, that's fine.
All right, we're over half an hour now. So any final thoughts?
Looking forward to next week.
Yep.
Me too.
All right. Well, on that, we'll call it an episode, and look for our next one next week.
I caught it on audio.